that the chat will remain closed during the presentation session, but will open once the presentation has concluded. After the presentation, we will move into the open discussion where you will have the opportunity to share your thoughts and ask questions. It is now my pleasure to hand over the floor to Professor Rekha Nyanthi, who will be leading us today's session on climate justice. Professor Rekha, the floor is yours.
Yes, Inoka, thank you very much for introducing me to today's audience. First of all, I must thanks to Director IAP, Mr. Prem Kumar, and also Ms. Aisha, who was communicating with me from the very beginning, and to Inoka too. So I think now the topic today's given to me is climate justice, addressing inequality in face of climate change. I think everybody knows about, I think this audience is having with the qualifications of the graduates and undergraduates, maybe probably beyond that level. So everyone knows about the climate change in what is happening in the globe and even Sri Lanka. And with that note, yes, before going to the particular topic, so I just want to give a very brief introduction about the climate change and definitions. So we have several definitions in the world, but I have taken only 2 definitions from United Nations and NASA. We know climate change is long-term shift in temperature and weather patterns, not only temperature and other weather variables, mainly due to burning of fossil fuels. You know what are the fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gases. So then climate change, another definitions I have taken from NASA. NASA is telling that climate change is changes in the average conditions such as temperature and rainfall and other phenomena. So coming to the causes of climate change, actually there are 2 main causes, natural causes and human causes. Actually, whether we like or not, natural causes are happening. So, but it is very slow mode. But in this century, we are talking about the human causes of climate change. That is the main culprits of climate change. But you see that natural causes are many. I have listed here. We are a little bit familiar with volcanic eruption. I think, you know, countries like Hawaii and Indonesia, Philippines, time to time we hear volcanic eruptions are take place. Apart from that, other things like continental drifts and kind of ocean currents changes and solar variations, those things are happening very, very slow motion. But human causes are the main things that we are considering this century. Burning of fossil fuels, greenhouse gas emissions, and agricultural activities, industrial process, and transportation, like that. So, everyone knows about the rise in temperature of the world. Global average temperature has increased by approximately 1.1 Celsius degrees since pre-industrial time, but expected to increase it 1.5 to 2 in very low emission scenario. But with the high emission scenario, like IPCC is the world recognized scientific organization doing climate change studies. They, according to their records, global temperature will be rise between 3.3 to 5.7. This is a very, very significant changes in future. So therefore, we all need to be considered about this global issue. So with I'm using a lot of maps, graphs, and pictures for you to understand. to get very quick understanding. So you can see the first graph of the slide. This world has been getting warmer and warmer, and this graphic says us this continuous trend of increasing of temperature is continuously increasing. So this graphic also says us how carbon dioxide is one of the greenhouse gases. So how it steadily increasing after 1950. So all these things make warmer condition in trend of warm in future also, because not only carbon dioxide, greenhouse gases like methane also increasing now in the globe. So in this graphic says very clearly to us global daily means surface temperature also increasing. This is the picture says that 2023 July, month of July, 3rd to 6th, 6 days are the most global recorded daily temperature recorded time. And this graphic is also now 2024. Again, July is the most remarkable daily temperature recorded month, July 1st to July 23rd. So I'm very much sure now so far 2023 is the highest temperature recorded year so far. And probably when we reach to 2025, we can hear 2024 will be the most temperature highest recording year. So this graphic showing sea level rise. You can see the trend like global temperature. Sea levels also rising in global level. So it is now here you can see per year 4.4 millimeters increasing than the 1900 time. So it is also increasing continuously. And I think these audience participants, they heard about the extreme weather events. Even Sri Lanka, we are now talking about extreme weather events. It's increased frequency of extreme weather events like floods happening, storms, droughts, and tropical cyclones, and hurricane and heavy rainfall, intensity of rainfall increasing all over the world in different countries. So then here different type of climatic weather extreme events, as I said, drought, smoke, so kind of heat waves, storm surge, hurricanes, tropical cyclones. This time now October, November, even Sri Lanka, we can expect some time when Bay of Bengal get low pressure depressions. Sri Lanka also will be affecting by tropical cyclones, and typhoons, hurricane, and tropical depressions are another example for weather extremes. And the other one is ocean acidification is another impact of climate change. So ocean acidification increased due to climate change because rise in atmospheric carbon dioxide level. It's leading higher carbon dioxide absorption by ocean. It's result in chemical reaction that lower the pH value. So this is another implication, the having ocean acidification, it will affect to various ecosystem in the ocean. So other one is loss of biodiversity. I think you know Sri Lanka is one of the hotspots of biodiversity. Many countries include two hotspots. So approximately 1 million species are currently risk of extinction due to habitat loss due to climate change and pollutions. So I will not read every values here. So it will affect into coral reef in the oceans even. So impacts on food security, also another implication. Crop yields have already decreased in some regions in the world due to climate change, change in conditions, like wheat yields dropping 10% to 20, regions like South Asia and Africa. So then it will increase 2050, reduced by global crops yield up to 30%, increase in risk of food shortage Especially it will impact to the developing countries like our countries. So these examples highlight the urgent need for global action to mitigate the impact of climate change, as both even past and future trends indicate very significant risks to ecosystem, our economies, and also human health. So this map says us to projected impacts of climate change agricultural yield. So I think you know the crop production increase 10 to 20% due to carbon dioxide increases. This is we can think that this is a good news. Parts per million, 550 carbon dioxide increases in the atmosphere. But of course, nutritional quality will be decreased. So most of the crops not survive at the high concentration of temperature and greenhouse gases. So increasing the temperature will give another favorable conditions for different pests and insects breeding places. So it will impact to the marine species and different livestock. So I'm taking some country example. This will helpful to you, like Bangladesh, Maldives, South Asian countries. We always hearing about the flooding and cyclone, rise in sea level, especially Maldives, because it's actually it will rise by 2100 1 meter. So that means actually Maldives is in elevation is only 1 meter above sea level. So then over 80% of the land will be vanished or highly vulnerable for climate change. This is according to IPCC predictions. And so intensity of the frequency of cyclones and the intensity also increasing by 30%. And coming to the country like Syria, having also drought and water scarcity. So, and Australia also having extreme heat and wildfire, because we are thinking that country like Australia is having very pleasant climate and all. But of course, in summertime, Australia having extreme heat. Even Europe countries, they have summertime extreme heat. And heat waves. So then California, USA, wildfire and water shortage, the country face problem, and wildfire areas increase by 500% percentage. You see, it's a huge amount from 1972 to 2018. And country like Nigeria, North Nigeria having desertification last 30 years. And so also floods 2012, high level of floods, 10 million, 7 million people had impacts and also economic losses. And India is our neighboring country. India also having heat waves and monsoon variability, because India also depend on the monsoon rainfall, and their frequency and rainfall variability is very high and increase up to 40% during monsoon season. It is impact into agricultural practices in Indian society. So then Arctic region, if you take the Greenland's melting ice and rising sea level, and its Greenland's ice sheet also losing approximately 279 billion tons of ice per year is a NASA calculation. So it will increase the global sea level rise. So, and coming to the topic, inequality in face of climate change. Actually, we have to talk basically due to the human causes, because we are not talking much about the natural causes. So this climate change actually extremely affects different population. As seen in low-income communities, sometimes they face higher exposure to extreme heat and flooding, and etc. Not only these two, heat and flooding, maybe drought, maybe typhoon, maybe cyclones, maybe other kind of disasters. So normally low-income countries are very vulnerable and exposed to these kind of disasters. They are leading very greater high health risk and economic instability compared to actually rich neighborhood countries. So global inequality and climate variability is therefore changing. Wealthy disparity significantly affect vulnerability to climate impacts, as evidenced by how rich communities can invest in resilient infrastructure and disaster preparedness, because their disaster preparedness are well organized and they are having very good resilience infrastructure. But while low income countries frequently lack access to basic resources, that we know these two disparities among rich and poor countries. So then these rich countries and developing countries generally actually better equipped cope with climate impacts due to their access to, because basically they advanced technology is one of the reasons they can cope with the climate change, and also financial resources. They have enough financial resources for dealing with climate change. And also but developing nation like our countries, South Asian countries and African countries, we don't have enough resources or inadequate infrastructure. We have limited funds and making more vulnerable situation to climate change, such as droughts, floods, sea level rise, and other kind of things. So you can see the advanced economies countries here, the dark blue countries here, that these areas, and so other less developed countries and least developed countries are suffering from climate change much. And access to resources also disparities we can notice for basic needs, clean water, food security, and health care, and also clean water, nutrition, food, and quality health care. Rich countries, they are having this kind of resources, and but underprivileged region, we frequently face severe water scarcity, food insecurity, and inadequate medical facilities. Even our country also, we can take some example. Still some areas, rural areas, they don't get enough electricity, water, drinking water, and they have to travel long distance to get the health facility and etc. So within our country, in the even within the country also, we can see the disparities. So country experience, Bangladesh is one of the very vulnerable country, climate vulnerable country, because they are frequently having flooding, cyclone, rising sea level, these three mainly. And they had 2020 very severe floods affecting more than 4 million people, and had significant damage to infrastructure and agriculture. So and Nigeria is another country having food security, vulnerability for the food security and livelihoods. And they are displaced people, 1.5 million people due to flooding. And climate change aggravate existing inequality in their society, making lot of social impacts. So Nigeria floods affects and million people after dam collapse, because dam, we know our country also having reservoirs, many countries having reservoirs, water storage reservoirs, but collapsing all those things also enhancing the climate change impact further. So desertification, Nigeria and its impacts on climate change, you can see the environment. So how it changed their society. So Maldives is another threatening of sea level rise. It is 2100, maybe it fully underwater by 2100. So more than 100,000 residents they have to displace. I mean, economic consequences are very much because these countries depend on tourism activities and fishing activities. So they will face significant risk and coastal erosion and weather extreme events, and diminish the tourism activities and their livelihoods of local communities. Kind of things will be happen. So what will happen to the Maldives by 2050, even though, I mean, rise in sea level, extreme weather events and coral destruction, because these countries having nice coral, and all those things, destruction take place, and remarkable place may end of exist by 2050. So regional case studies, if you take the heat waves in South and Southeast Asia, so you can see this graphic, the color change with the temperature increases, and sub-Saharan Africa also very vulnerable, and South Asia also vulnerable for heat waves. And no, as I said earlier, these are Europe countries. Even Europe countries are vulnerable for heat waves. Every year, heat waves and death recordings are increasing. So, small island, small island developing states, we call as SIDS. You can see many small islands are here. Those islands are also vulnerable. One example is Tuvalu. Yes, Tuvalu is somewhere here, and Fiji Island is down here. So these countries actually also having vulnerable their land and freshwater resources, risk to agricultural activities and their drinking water supplies, and also impacting their livelihoods. So then Fiji Island also same, the rise in sea level and increase in frequency of cyclones, and they also having the coral bleaching, and they have the impact from the tropical cyclone, and impacting infrastructure and livelihoods. So kind of several things are happening around the world. And coming to the social inequality, race and ethnicity, and how marginalized communities face greater risk. Indigenous people, many countries having indigenous people, even Canada having indigenous people. So we call as Inuit and First Nation of Canadians. So they also having significant change in climate change, because melting of ice in those areas and transform wildlife patterns, then ecosystem and extreme weather events. And also 2019 report in Inuit communities are observing a 70% decline in sea ice thickness, which impact traditional hunting practice and food security, because their traditional hunting practices and food security is vulnerable for with the decline of sea ice. So these changes make some threaten to their cultural practices and livelihood. As indigenous people, they rely on the land for nutrition, and lack of adequate representation in decision-making process related to climate policies are somewhat need to be considered. So coming to the Arctic Sea and long and effective global air conditioner, actually this is a temperature is equalizing with the Arctic global air conditioner, is a take as a global air conditioner. So if if sea ice disappear, so then the darker ocean surface can appear, so then absorb sunlight instead of reflecting. If the sunlight reflecting, it's allow much more heat to enter the Arctic Sea. So then another example is Brazil's Amazon indigenous community, the rainforest area. So this Kayapo and Yanomamis, indigenous people, they also face a lot of problems due to deforestation and land degradation due to climate change. And so then their traditional way of livelihoods also changing. These indigenous people territories and their resources are changing. So this limited access to healthcare and education makes further enhance their situation. And then land developers and illegal loggers make worsen their vulnerability and lead to further displacement. So kind of example. And I'm coming to somewhat different idea. So gender inequality, women and children regularly bear the burden of climate impacts. How they make that impacts, how they burden the climate impacts. Women in Bangladesh, some example, are extremely affected by climate impacts such as, because Bangladesh always having flooding and cyclones, and its result loss of livelihoods and increase their responsibilities for household survivals. So 2020 monsoon season, approximately 4 million people affected by flooding Bangladesh, and with women facing intensified risk of displacement and gender bias violences. So then it's a not simple thing. So then women are repeatedly forefront of community adaptive initiatives. For women-led organizations are very famous in country like Bangladesh, Vietnam, and some other countries. So they are trying to make some flood resistance homes and participate in different disaster preparedness training program to increase their knowledge and deal with the climate change. This photo taken from internet, so photo credit goes to this source. And Bangladesh is among the most vulnerable countries to flooding and climate change impact. So then you see the people, families, how they deal with the climate change and floods, and they are adapting to the system. So then the other countries, Philippines, also women and children are mostly vulnerable. Philippines society, because they get several typhoons and extreme weather events, and it disrupting their education and healthcare access. So then 20 typhoons annually, average 20 typhoons annually, with 2013 typhoon named Haiyan, result in over 6,000 deaths. Many of them were women and children. So you can understand then how women and children are vulnerable for the climate change impact. So so then we have to think about that, actually the resilience of the women, how we can improve their resilience to climate change, how they should cope with the climate change and disaster risk reduction, and how improve the climate adaptation strategies for the people, vulnerable people or marginalized people or indigenous people, and kind of things we need to think. And so then Philippine storms, you can see the number of storms are increasing like anything, and death also increasing like anything. So this is the climate change, some of the impacts that in the having with the world record. So, and due to these issues, job losses in vulnerable communities, economic impacts also come in. Not only social impacts, economic impacts are effects of climate change, like industries like agriculture and fishing having a lot of problems. Those are engaging in these activities. And country like Vietnam, actually Vietnam had a very good developed initiatives, economic initiatives, but again Vietnam is having some issues with economic their country, and also some impacts with the climate change. Agriculture, mainly rice production and salinity, and Mekong Delta is spreading the Vietnam, and due to rise in sea level, extreme events, they are also having time to time climate change impact. So I'm not reading everything here. So Pacific Island is impacts on fishing activities. There are Fiji, I already said the Fiji is a small island state. So food security and employment issues are already having due to the climate change. Another thing is coral bleaching and change in fish migration pattern adversely affecting fish stocks actually. So and yes, so coming to what is climate justice, I think so far I explain it like causes of climate change and impacts of climate change, and how the marginalized people, indigenous people, vulnerable for the climate change. Actually, climate justice fair treatment of all people in relation to climate change. That is the climate justice that we need to understand. It should be fair treatment to everybody, like marginalized communities, marginalized people. Otherwise, they regularly bear the burden of its impacts because of the contributing the least to the problem. They are the people contributing very least to the problem, global warming and climate change. They emit the greenhouse gases very small amount, but they are the people who suffer from the climate change. And low income communities, actually individuals and families living in poverty who lack of resources adapt to climate impacts. So country like low income communities, it's very difficult to adapt into the climate change. And indigenous people, also communities with ancestral ties, they land, they are often disproportionately affected by environmental degradation or climatic policies. And then other group is racial and ethnic minorities. They also face to the system inequalities for climate change, leading increase in vulnerability to climate impacts. So, and the other group is women. I explained the women are very vulnerable to climate change, especially developing countries, women's families, and elderly individuals, older elder people. Even the disaster take place, actually in emergency situation, they are very, very vulnerable and hopeless, because if we are not caring about the elderly people, so they get more vulnerable. And children also same. And when things happen, I think you can see the nowadays Gaza war is going on. The women and children are so much vulnerable. That is, war is also the human made actually problem. And people with disabilities also, you understand, physical or mental disabilities, the people are vulnerable for climate change impacts. And rural communities, and also homeless individuals without stable housing. The housing structures, when it is very poor, there are several disasters, and they cannot survive in proper way. So with the low status of housing condition. So how do marginalized communities experience the effects of climate change differently? These communities face higher risk from climate change due to inadequate infrastructure. These are some examples: limited resources for adaptation practices, and higher exposures to environmental hazards, such as flooding and whatever I explained, heat waves and other things. And also socioeconomic status also significantly influence in community ability to prepare, respond to, and recover stage. Disaster, when we do the disaster management, before disaster and after disaster, if they have proper response and recovery and emergency services, they are safe. But problem is for vulnerable communities, always low income groups, often lacking the financial resources to adapt to the existing system. And also marginalized community affected by climate change, like indigenous communities, as I explained, displacement due to rising sea level. Many areas, due to rising sea levels, communities will be disappear, and change in ecosystem and traditional way of life and cultural heritage will be changed. And also aggravating existing inequality, further aggravate due to climate change. It magnifies existing social, economic, and health inequalities. Again, it will enhance. So then, what are the strategies can be implemented to promote climate justice? So we can promote inclusive policy making, marginalized communities in the decision making process. We need to take them to the decision making process, and community resilience buildings like infrastructure development, community program, and access to common resources, providing financial assistance and especially technical supports. And education and awareness, implementing educational program and equitable funding, allocate funds especially for climate justice initiatives to be common to marginalized people also, and restoration of ecosystems, like promoting projects and restoration natural habitats kind of things, and also legal protections for them, and collaborative network partnership between government, maybe NGOs and local organization. I mean, JOA one also, it comes under local organization or NGOs. So I have seen your websites. You are doing a lot of activities with the youth, younger generation. So kind of things, the climate change also you can take into account to make some very good kind of forum for the countryside and also beyond the country level. And climate justice advocacy, we have to mobilize the communities with the policy priorities giving equity and justice. And yeah, some action that youth can take to promote climate justice. We can raise the awareness program, um, campaigns, workshops, social media initiatives, and join from climate groups and student organization, and engage in activisms, kind of protest and kind of activities, and lobby for change. Local leaders and policymakers get together and talk about this point, and volunteers and local environmental organization or community projects focus in sustainability for the justice of climate change. So and lead by examples, daily life, such as reducing waste. So we also can do something. Youth can promote kind of activities, reducing waste, conserving energy, and using public transport. Actually, many countries, rich countries, public transport are very, very good, because they, even though they have individual vehicles, they don't go by vehicles except very important tasks, because they used to go by public transport. So it will actually decrease the increase in the atmospheric greenhouse gases, so it decrease. So promote youth voice, like blogs and podcast and social media, promoting and participating in research, climate research projects. Even your organization can having some joint program with our universities, and time to time you can have workshops, seminars. Today is also one of the outcome from that after our discussions. So this is also one of the awareness program. So I mean, you can also go to do some research projects with the universities, and do new things, and find out new things, and create art and media is another one. Art, music and film, drama. Through drama also we can give the message, and kind of several things, workshops at school level, awareness program, and educate yourself also, ourselves also. We have to educate, like um, how we can contribute to, I mean, decrease the climate change, and also advocate policy changes. We have to promote policies, taking local people into the policy discussions, and kind of things, and reduce our carbon footprints. You know what is carbon footprints? As much as possible, we if we consider as an organization, maybe individual, as a university, as your organization also, you can take some action in your daily life, such as using public transport, reducing waste, and conserving energy kind of things, and also raise awareness programs. So these are the things that we can do, and participate in climate protest demonstrations, and support ethical companies, and engage in community discussions, donate climate justice organization, practice sustainable living. And yes, with this, I think I'm going to uh, stop my presentation. So far, still way forward, we can talk about the community-led adaptation measurements, and integrating climate equity into national policies. These are the main things actually, and strengthen the international collaboration. Agreement with, like, Paris Agreement is now all the many countries agreed with the Paris Agreement and Sendai framework for action to minimize the climate change and keeping the temperature records at least below 2 Celsius degree. So otherwise the impacts will be huge for all of us. So therefore Sri Lanka also one of the we've signed agreement to the Paris Agreement, so keeping the temperature below Celsius degree 2. So yeah, you can reach me through my Google Scholar account I have, and ResearchGate and staff profile. Whatever the way that if you need any supports, you can reach me. So with this, I can stop my presentation. If you have any questions, you can ask from me.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor, for your thorough explanation and insight into these complex issues in climate justice. Your expertise will help us better comprehend the challenges we face and the importance of adopting sustainable practices to mitigate climate change. And also, I think whenever the whole presentation of yours is quite alarming. So we have prepared a set of thoughtful questions for our esteemed panelist, Professor Rekha. So to start off, Professor Rekha, I'd like to know what are the economic challenges that vulnerable communities face when adapting to climate change?
So actually, as I earlier explained, we have several adaptation measures, several adaptation strategies. But actually, the marginalized people or developing countries or underdeveloped countries people, we have limited financial resources for all those things. And also, those adaptation methods even very high cost. Now actually indigenous adaptation methods are still we are practicing, but with the current practice, sometimes some adaptations are not valid or not up to the standard level. So therefore we need financial resources, and also otherwise the increase in disparities or displacement of the societies when they do for some adaptation. For example, if they need to go for smart agriculture, sometimes the rural agricultural practices should be changed to other practices like that. So then and also they are having very limited access for the credits, loan facilities, going to the bank, and that knowledge is very less for adaptation practices. Okay, so and also inadequate infrastructure, it's making a lot of harassment for them. Otherwise they also can do some kind of activities, deal with the climate change, but any government need to think about those practices, those infrastructure development and all. As I said, some areas still people are not having electricity, it's still not having drinking water for them. So you know these things. And insurance barriers in Sri Lanka is famous for vehicle insurance and health. Now it's little bit health insurance also, but marginalized people, actually they don't have any insurance policies categories. And health cost is increasing like anything, you know, with the climate change, dengue increasing and other kind of diseases increasing. So how they afford to the health sectors, I mean, that is also one of the issue. And lack of technical assistance is very very bad situation, because we need to get good technical assistance for the people to learn something new and to adapt to the climate change even. So I think this is enough. I can tell many more things, but this is enough, right?
Yes, thank you very much, Professor, for your wonderful explanation. And there is one more question we would like to ask, and that is, what role does education play in promoting climate justice, especially among younger generation? and disadvantaged communities.
Yeah, that also I think I addressed in my presentation, but
Yes.
if I repeat in again some of the points, actually awareness building is must. So I think you heard about the audience participants regarding the Tilly Smith story. When we have the tsunami that time, Tilly Smith, UK student, she listened to the geography teacher. He has shown 1 or 2 weeks before the tsunami incident. Then that time, no one knows about the tsunami. Even Sri Lanka's universities, schools, we don't know about the tsunami. But this little girl, keep in mind this situation, this video clips, all the things she keep in the mind, and when she come to the Thailand for entertainment with the family, she has seen that the waves coming and going and coming the second wave. So she shouted like anything to parents, dad, mom, so this is a tsunami, we have to go, we have to run very quickly, like that. So all the hotel people around them, so they saved their life around, I think, more than 50, 60 people because of this education awareness. Education is very important. That's why this, if you go to the website Tilly Smith story, you will see she has received so many awards from different countries, and because of this awareness of education. And so critical thinking is another thing. So we can think critically. So how we deal with this climate change and skill development, we have to practice. We don't have the country like these things. I heard Bangladesh, and I have seen India. Sometimes they go to the rural communities, and they practice rural people how to deal with some, at least how to prepare their house, how to make some kind of things at home, like that. Okay, so and community engagement must, you see, many countries, South Asian countries, community engagement is very, very good rather than our countries. And also policy advocacy, and also sustainable practices, as I said earlier. So these kind of things, I think we have to think seriously.
Yes, thank you, Professor, for your comprehensive explanation, because your perspective is very helpful for us, and I believe everyone who's listening today will be, witnessing the same. So we have one more question for you, Professor, and we would like to know your perspective on the same as well. So how can we raise awareness about climate justice in regions where it is not yet a priority?
Mhm. Mm. So then again, we can have some kind of community engagement. So even your organization and other organization can have some kind of relationship with community engagement practices, and taking their knowledge and sharing your knowledge with them, and also partnership with local leaders. We have even government, we have very good administration units, Gram Niladhari, Samurdhi Niladhari, and so many agro, how to call in single Vaga Niladhari or something, agro officers, Gram Niladhari, Gram officers and all. So if we have some kind of very good interaction with leaders, even temple and mosque and religious leaders, we can have some kind of awareness program for the local communities, and education program through schools, universities, organization like your organization. And storytelling is maybe, I don't know whether new things for you. It's, in Japan, like Nagoya city and all areas, their storytelling is very, very important. The community centers, our community centers, except funeral kind of things, it's always closed. Our community centers, but those Japan people, they use their community centers every month for uh, doing some activities with children, the elder people passing their knowledge generation to generation regarding the climate, environmental changes and environmental observations. That knowledge going one generation to another generation. So, and social media also have some kind of practice. I mean, we can promote through social media and workshop and training programs, even one day training, one day workshop, 2-3 hours workshop like that, and traditional knowledge incorporate in the traditional knowledge. We cannot ignore traditional knowledge. Still, rural areas, Himalaya and kind of very remote areas, still they practice the traditional knowledge for disaster risk reduction, you know. So some of the point that we can take from them, the traditional people, and art and cultural practices we can promote. I mean, music and dramas and different language festivals, promoting festivals through drama, give some message, and collaborative projects is very, very important, I think, making collaborations with other countries, NGOs, NGOs, universities. Yes, I think this is enough.
Okay, well noted, Professor, and thank you again for your timely explanation. So, thank you so much, Professor Rekha, for today, for taking off today's session and for your incredible insights. So, on behalf of everyone, I'd like to thank and extend our sincere gratitude to Dr. Rekha Nyanti for sharing such valuable insights and expertise today, because your contribution has made this session not only informative, but also deeply thought-provoking. We truly appreciate your time and for helping us gain a better understanding of these critical issues in climate justice. And a heartfelt thank goes to our audience also for their active participation today. And we hope to have your engaging questions for the Q&A session as well. So lastly, special thank goes to our coordinators for their hard work in organizing this successful event. Your efforts behind the scenes made this session possible.